It's looking like Shohei Ohtani might need to build a new room on his house for all this hardware. He brings home some more. Not surprisingly, a little surprising, it was unanimous. Also, a controversial vote in the American League, and we'll talk just about MVP awards in general. Let's dig into it all on this episode of All Dodgers. Coming at you live from my mom's basement here in Pleasant Grove, Utah. This is the All Dodgers podcast, part of the Bleav Network of podcasts brought to you by FanDuel. I am Jeff Snider. It is just me tonight. Clint is busy. Kevin is tired. Here I am, just manning up, and happy to be here. We're not going to do episodes every day in the offseason, but the day that Shohei Ohtani is elected MVP again is a day we definitely do an episode. So here we are, talking Dodgers because, as I said, Shohei Ohtani was named the National League MVP award winner again today. He's been in the National League for 2 years. He now has 2 MVP awards to go along with 2 World Series titles, an NLCS MVP award, just a whole lot of hardware. Overall, it's his 4th career MVP. All 4 of them have been unanimous, which is something nobody has ever done before. Barry Bonds won 7 MVPs. Only one of them was unanimous. Ohtani has been unanimous all 4 times. And you know what? Not showing any signs of letting anybody else have a chance for a while. So great day to be a Shohei Ohtani fan. Of course, it's always a good day to be a Shohei Ohtani fan, and a great day for Shohei Ohtani to be playing in Dodger blue like it has been the last couple of years. I want to talk a little bit about this because there were times this season when it wasn't a foregone conclusion that Ohtani was going to win the MVP. I don't know that there was ever a time that he didn't deserve it, but there was a time when Kyle Schwarber was making a push. Early in the season, people were talking about maybe Pete Crow Armstrong. He ended up finishing 9th because he was terrible in the second half of the season. But people were talking Schwarber, and Schwarber for a while did take a pretty big lead in home runs on Ohtani. In the end, though, Schwarber ended up with one more home run than Ohtani and 30 more RBIs. And that's it. Everything else was in favor of Ohtani. And now some people, a certain generation perhaps, think the home runs and RBIs, that's what MVP used to be voted on, honestly. You look at, who was it? Willie Stargell in 1979, I think. Actually, I don't even know if that might have just been sentimentality, but when I was growing up, if you led the league in home runs and RBIs, you had a pretty good chance of winning the MVP award. And these days, they look at a lot more than that. And a lot of times defense comes into play, which we'll talk a little bit about when we talk about the American League award. In this case, Schwarber and Ohtani were both DHs. And so defense doesn't come into it. But all the other stats, like on-base percentage. On-base percentage is my favorite stat for a hitter because I think of it, what's the opposite of it? The opposite is getting out percentage. How often do you get out? What's the one thing in baseball that's limited? Outs. And so if you get on base more than other people, you are a more valuable hitter. Now, obviously, then power comes into play too. And so that's why you have slugging percentage. Well, on base percentage, Ohtani 395 to Schwarber's, or 392 to Schwarber's 365, so a 27-point edge. Slugging percentage 622 to 563, so a 59-point edge. Overall OPS, add them together, 1014 for Ohtani, 928 for Schwarber. Schwarber had a great season. I don't know that he deserved second place, but it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was going to finish second. He did get, I think, as low as a 5th place vote, but ultimately he finished second. OPS plus, meaning park adjusted compared to the league. Ohtani 179, so 79% better than average, and Schwarber 150. Absolutely great OPS plus, 150. Second place, there you go. I said yesterday, my only question coming in was, would Ohtani be unanimous? Because it seemed at times this season like there might be some momentum building towards Schwarber getting some first place votes. In the end, he didn't. Shohei Ohtani got all 30 first place votes, as it should be. And I kind of said this last night when we were talking about the Cy Young voting. a, how do I put this? A race as clear as this one, that Ohtani was clearly the best player in the National League, he should have got all 30 votes. And I was very glad to see that he did. And some of that comes down to, and actually, we're going to talk more about that when we talk about the American League one. I know it's a Dodgers show, but this is it. The American League MVP vote was very close and a little bit controversial. And so I'll dig more into this, but I'll just say, for me, the MVP is synonymous with the best player. That's what it means. And people try to parse out the word valuable. Well, maybe not the best, but the most valuable. And I do not believe that there's a difference. I believe the way you provide value to your team is by playing baseball goodly. And even in other sports, I can see it. But in baseball, 99.9% of the things that you can do to boost your MVP case also help your team. And so, you hit a home run. Yeah, it looks good on your resume. It also gives your team at least one run and up to 4. And so all the things, in basketball, for example, you can have a guy who just takes every shot for his team. And so, he leads the league in scoring, but you could make a case that the team would have been better if he had dished the ball around a little bit more, spread things out. There are arguments to be made there. But in baseball, you come up when it's your turn in the lineup. You only get to play the ball when it's hit to you. And so you can't force those things. You can't hand the ball off to the same guy, throw the ball to the same guy every time like you can in football. Can't let the one guy take most of the shots like you can in basketball. It's all split up. And so anything you can do to earn yourself an MVP award also helps your team. And that's good. And so for that reason, I just say the best player should be the MVP. And, wins above replacement, WAR. There's 2 or 3 different versions of WAR. It's trying to measure exactly how valuable a player was, how good a player was. You can quibble about the specifics because, the different versions of WAR can't even agree. And so it's not as cut and dry as saying, oh, this guy had a 7.7 WAR and this guy had a 7.6 WAR, so the 7.7 is better. When you get that close, it's not that simple. And then, we'll talk more in the American League section. When you're comparing across different positions too, then it gets even harder. But WAR is a useful tool. For example, if one guy has a 7.7 WAR and the other guy has a 4.7 WAR, you can pretty confidently say the guy with the 7.7 WAR was better. Those aren't random numbers. That's Shohei Ohtani at 7.7 and Cal Schwarber at 4.7. According to Baseball Reference, I know that Ohtani led on FanGraphs too, and I should have looked up. So on FanGraphs, Ohtani had 7.5 WAR. Is that combined? And that's the other thing. Ohtani pitches too, and that's when you try to factor that in. 7.5 WAR for Ohtani, and Kyle Schwarber had 4.9. Yeah, it's not even close in the WAR department. And again, I'm not saying that you just look at WAR and vote that way. In the last segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about how these awards voting things have gotten kind of predictable, and some of that is because of WAR. So we'll dig more into that. But all in all, WAR, when it's that big a disparity, it really is that simple. Throw in the fact that Ohtani pitches too. Yeah, not even close. And I'm glad that the voters agreed. And none of that is a knock on Kyle Schwarber at all, because Kyle Schwarber had a good season and was very valuable to his team. And in the end, he finished second, which is somewhere around where he probably deserved to finish. Shohei Ohtani, though, just a legend. And I saw somebody mention, so this is the first time in history that both leagues have had the same MVP back-to-back seasons. Judge and Ohtani last year, Judge and Ohtani this year. It's never happened before in both leagues at the same time. And I saw somebody tweet about that and say that they've both kind of locked up their spot in Cooperstown. And I was thinking about that. And let's talk about Ohtani now. I'll talk about the Judge half of things in a minute. Ohtani right now, if he retired today, he would not make the Hall of Fame because he would not be eligible. You have to play in 10 seasons, and Ohtani has only played in 8 seasons. And so he's not eligible yet. But I think of it like Clayton Kershaw. As soon as Clayton Kershaw won his 3rd Cy Young Award, which also happened to be his first MVP in 2014, he had punched his ticket to Cooperstown, even though at that point he had only played in 7 seasons. So we were just at a technicality at that point. Okay, once he's played in 3 more seasons, then he's for sure a lock for the Hall of Fame. Ohtani's the same way. As soon as Ohtani, if he plays 1 game in 2026 and 1 game in 2027 and retires, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's not going to do that. Hopefully he's going to keep winning MVPs for the Dodgers for a while. But Ohtani is a Hall of Famer, and not just based on, all the hype about the most talented player ever and people arguing, is he the best player ever? And, that, like most sports arguments, that's usually a case of people arguing different definitions of things. But in the end, Ohtani he's for sure the most talented player ever, but just based on what he's done on the field, he has locked up. He's going to the Hall of Fame as soon as he is eligible by playing 2 more seasons and then being retired for 5 years, which hopefully is still a long way down the road. And that's pretty cool. And like I said, I'm going to talk about the Aaron Judge half of that thing in a second because there's a similar argument, except also different because Judge has been in the league a little bit longer than Shohei Ohtani has. First, before we talk about Ohtani, or before we talk about Judge and Cal Raleigh, I want to talk about FanDuel a little bit, just looking at the odds. The odds have not changed since the last time we talked. For who's going to the World Series next year, the Dodgers are at plus 180 to represent the National League in the World Series, and the Yankees are at plus 320. Unsurprisingly, they both just won MVP awards, those 2 teams did. They are the 2 most high-profile teams in baseball, and that affects the betting odds a lot. I think the Dodgers are pretty likely. I think if you're looking for a better bet, going against the Yankees, I think, you got the Mariners, the Astros, the Red Sox, Blue Jays, Tigers, trailing the Yankees by quite a bit. I think some of those guys might be some smarter money if you were looking for that. But that's some interesting stuff to think about anyway. And if you put money on Shohei Ohtani to win the MVP, you won, but you probably didn't win much because he was kind of the odds-on favorite most of this season. So, like I said, I know this is a Dodgers podcast, but these award seasons are pretty interesting. And this one specifically, the American League MVP, was one that was kind of controversial coming into, going throughout the season, because Cal Raleigh had the best season of his career by far. Cal Raleigh had never had, his career high in WAR was 4.7, and this year was 7.4. His career high in OPS plus was 122. This year is 169. His career high in homers was 34. This year he hit 60. Just remarkable numbers. Only the 4th American leaguer ever and the first non-Yankee to hit 60 home runs in a season. Cal Raleigh had a great season. Problem is Aaron Judge had an otherworldly season. And for me, if I had been voting, I would have voted for Aaron Judge, simply because you look at the offensive numbers, and I'll talk about defense in a minute because there is a difference. I mean, they play different positions. Cal Raleigh plays a much more important defensive position than Aaron Judge, and that has to be factored in. That's one of the things that wins above replacement attempts to factor in, is defensive, value, positional adjustments, all of that stuff. And even with that, Judge was at 9.7 WAR, Raleigh was at 7.4, 2.3 WAR difference on Baseball Reference. So that's factoring in position. But even so, say you just say, okay, well, that makes me not trust WAR. Let's look at the actual numbers. Okay. Raleigh hit 7 more homers, had 60 homers compared to 53 for Judge. Raleigh had 11 more RBIs. Other than that, I mean, Judge blew him out of the water. And especially when you look at the on-base percentage, which I said, remember, the opposite of on-base percentage is getting out percentage. And so Aaron Judge only got out 54.3% of the time. Cal Raleigh got out 64.1% of the time. Flip those round numbers we're used to. On-base percentage, 457 for Judge, 359 for Raleigh. Almost 100 points, 98-point difference in on-base percentage, which means that Raleigh literally got out 10% more often than Aaron Judge. That's a huge difference. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's a huge difference. You look at slugging percentage, even though Raleigh hit more home runs. Judge, 688 slugging percentage. Raleigh, 589. 99 points difference slugging percentage. So even though Raleigh had more homers, Judge had more power, got more, total bases, however you want to put it, slugging percentage. He hit better. That's the bottom line. Judge was a significantly better hitter than Cal Raleigh this year, even though Cal Raleigh hit the home runs. And again, none of this is to knock Raleigh, just to talk about what a great season Aaron Judge had. And then you look at the position. How much more valuable is a catcher than a right fielder? Definitely more valuable for sure, but enough to make up for 100 points of on-base percentage and 100 points of slugging percentage. Enough to make up for Raleigh 169 OPS plus, Judge 215 OPS plus. Just, Raleigh was 1.7 times better than the average player. Judge was over twice as good as the average hitter. Just, the only way to make the case for Raleigh for me would be if you're not voting on actually who had the better season. Because I'll put it this way. Raleigh had the more fun season. Raleigh had the more historic season. Set the record for home runs by a catcher, home runs by a switch hitter. Like I said, the first non-Yankee to hit 60 home runs in the American League ever. All those things, it's historic. It's a historic season, absolutely. But it wasn't as good as Judge's season, unfortunately. And that's, and not everybody agreed. Judge got 17 first place votes. Raleigh got 13. And the other 13 first or second place or other 17, whatever I mean. Judge was 17 first place, 13 second place. Raleigh was 13 first place, 17 second place. Everybody agreed these two are our top two. And if two people vote differently, it's a tie. And there have been ties before. In 1979, Keith Hernandez and Willie Stargell tied for the National League MVP award. It can happen. I kind of wish it had happened here because when it's a tie, guess what? They just both get it. And that, I think that would have been awesome. And I kind of wish that two of these voters had Biff's almanac from Back to the Future and been able to see, oh, look, if we just change our two votes, then they'll both win the award, because it really is a season where it would have been satisfying. A lot of times you think of a tie, they refer to it as kissing your sister or whatever. And so a lot of people don't think that a tie is satisfying. I think in this case, a tie would have been satisfying. In 1979, when Hernandez and Stargell tied, the funny thing is they didn't even get the same number of votes. Stargell got 10 first place votes. Hernandez only got 4. But Stargell wasn't even on some ballots because he shouldn't have been. He didn't have a great season. The Pirates were a good team, and he was a inspirational leader. And that goes back to what I was talking about how, for me, you have to judge value based on how well did they play baseball. Because while other things do exist, I don't think the voters are really privy to those things. And I think most of the time the players who have those intangibles that you might be tempted to vote for in MVP don't play as good a baseball. Like, you could make an argument that Miguel Rojas made his teammates better this year and stuff. And so you can you can make an argument that Rojas's value exceeded what he provided on the field this year, but you can't make an argument that it exceeded what he provided on the field by so much that he should have been in the MVP conversation. And that's the way it usually is with these guys. The players who provide those intangibles usually aren't the stars of the team. And the MVP goes to the stars because most of the value, no matter how you slice it, no matter how valuable you think Miguel Rojas was, Shohei Ohtani was more valuable than him this year because of how much better he played on the field. And so I see that some people, I saw Elisheva says MVP means value. Raleigh was uber valuable. He absolutely was. Second most valuable guy in the American League. I totally agree that he was very valuable. Cole says if Raleigh got the Gold Glove, maybe that puts him over the edge, but he wasn't nominated. Yeah, and Raleigh, I think he is a good defensive catcher. I think it was kind of overblown that he went the whole season with no pass balls. Pass balls are so rare that the difference between 0 passed balls and whoever had the most pass balls in the league is pretty small. And so it's one of those quirky stats more than valuable stats. But ultimately, so maybe I didn't say something right because the Enigma says there's no universe where Cal's value is comparable to Rojas. No one's arguing for Cal based on intangibles, but based on his place in history and how he was valuable to his team. And maybe we're splitting hairs here. But I'm saying the way you're valuable to your team is by playing baseball really well, which Cal Raleigh did, but Aaron Judge did better. And so Aaron Judge provided more value because he played baseball, somewhere between a little bit and a lot better than Cal Raleigh, depending on how much weight you want to give to positional adjustment. But for me, I don't see any reasonable amount of weight you could give to catcher that makes up for the massive offensive difference between Raleigh and Judge. That's my thoughts on that one. Devin says Raleigh won the Platinum Glove last year. He's an elite defender. Did he win the Platinum Glove? I don't. I know he won the Gold Glove last year at catcher. I don't know who won the Platinum Glove. I assume there's somewhere that's listed, but still, that doesn't. Last year he had 1.5 defensive WAR, according to Baseball Reference. This year was 0.2, and so I think he was probably a better defensive catcher last year than he was this year. And again, like one of my biggest issues with all of this, these kind of things, whether it's awards voting or MVP voting, is it ends up people criticizing other people instead of complimenting the winner. And my only argument in this American League race is that Aaron Judge was so good that he absolutely deserved the MVP award. And none of that is any knock on Cal Raleigh. It's just that Cal Raleigh picked a bad year to have his career year. Maybe he can do it again next year, and maybe Judge takes a step backwards. But Aaron Judge won this award. Cal Raleigh didn't lose it. Aaron Judge just went out and played better than anybody else in baseball. And the fact is, if Ohtani was still in the American League, he wouldn't have won the MVP award the last 2 years either. Aaron Judge is right now the best player in baseball. You can throw in all the things about how well you think he's going to age at his size and all those things. But in 2025, Aaron Judge was the best player in the American League, in my opinion, and in the opinion of 17 of the 30 MVP voters who had American League MVP votes. Let's see. I'm just looking through. I've been starring a couple comments as I've seen them. Obviously, I haven't seen everything because, I'm talking to. RJM says, will Shohei pass Barry Bonds in MVP awards? He needs 3 to tie and 4 to pass him. 7 MVPs is a lot. Bonds obviously had the help of, using performance enhancing drugs, allegedly, And so he was able to play at a very high level well into his 40s. I suspect that that Shohei Ohtani will not use performance-enhancing drugs the way that Barry Bonds allegedly did. And so it will be harder for him to play as deep into his career. But the fact that Ohtani pitches and hits and does both at an elite level, it gives him the edge. I mean, he's got to be the favorite next year. And until he slows down, he'll continue to be the favorite. And so he might be able to get 3 more before he starts slowing down. That's my hope, because it's good for the Dodgers when Shohei Ohtani is playing at an MVP level. Stephanie Cant Curry says, Michael Conforto was robbed of MVP. Absolutely agree. Hashtag free Conforto. Excuse me. BC says, according to WAR, Betts had a way better season despite a 732 OPS than Freddie's 870 OPS. I don't know. I haven't compared them. I don't know if way better is accurate. Let's see. According to WAR, Mookie Betts was 4.9, Freddie Freeman 3.5. And BC follows that up and says, I don't care how good your defense is, it's not 150 OPS points better. And this is, this is one of the all-time arguments about WAR. How much credit do you deserve for being an excellent defensive shortstop versus being a relatively poor defensive first baseman? And I don't mean that as a knock on Freddie Freeman, more a acknowledgement of his health situation. Freddie continued to be among the best in baseball at scooping balls at first base, but his range was extremely limited this year. He just, between the ankle injury and age and whatever other reasons, Freddie Freeman just wasn't a great defensive first baseman this year. And so for me, I would love to have Mookie hitting like peak Mookie, but I think there's a decent case to be made that Mookie, despite not hitting as well as Freddie, throw in the very, very good defense at the second most important position in baseball, and compared to Freddie's unimpressive defense, underwhelming defense at one of the easiest positions. And yeah, I don't think it's crazy that Mookie had a higher WAR than Freddie. And that's fine that BC disagrees too. Let's see, what else do we got here? BC also says, Pa has had a great year offensively too, though. Second in homers, and despite that, still much less WAR than Betts. That one's easy. Yeah. Andy Pa has had a 313 on-base percentage. Andy Paz didn't have a great year offensively. Andy Pa has hit a lot of home runs, relatively speaking. But Andy Pa has had a 115 OPS plus. No, sorry, 114 OPS plus. A little bit better than Mookie's 104. But then you throw in Mookie's better defense. And Pages needs to learn how to take a walk. And that's when his value will start jumping up. Because, again, a 313 on base percentage means that he got out 88.7% of the time. No, 68.7% of the time. Sorry, Andy. And Mookie didn't have a great on base percentage. He was only at 326. That's still better. And then the defense and all that. So, defense is always going to be one of the biggest controversial aspects of wins above replacement because it is harder to quantify. It is the area where I think they're guessing more than anything else. They're guessing on defense more than they're guessing on offense. I think they've done a pretty good job of figuring out what constitutes value offensively. Defensively, I think they're still figuring it out. And I think that's where a lot of the differences between the different methods of or versions of WAR comes in, is different ways that they factor in defense and measure that. But in the end, defense is important, even if we don't know exactly how important it is. And that's why people can still argue about how important it is. Alex Renteria says Jeff wanted the big dumper to win. I didn't really care. Like I said, I would have voted for Aaron Judge. I think Aaron Judge deserved to win. I like Aaron Judge. I like Cal Raleigh. I don't have strong feelings about either of them. I definitely don't have strong negative feelings about either of them. But based on my opinion that the MVP should go to the best player, I would have voted for Aaron Judge. Let's see. Richie Flores says hitting all those home runs while catching and being a game caller is more impressive than a DH hitting home runs. Aaron Judge didn't play a ton of DH. He did play some DH this year, but he definitely played more right field than DH. And playing defense is something. And again, like, yeah, it's impressive what Raleigh did. It just doesn't, it's not as valuable, in my opinion, and the opinion of 17 of the 30 American League MVP voters. Nando says Aaron Judge deserves better than the Yankees. Hey, he made his choice. He gets to live with it. He's the captain, baby. Devin says playing DH negatively affecting your WAR is kind of insane to me. How can you be a negative impact on D if you never played the field? It's not that you're a negative impact. They draw the baseline, and you could, if you set the baseline at DH and say, okay, defensive value is 0 as a DH, well, then everybody else just gets up higher. Yeah, they do some of them as positive numbers and some of them as negative numbers because they just kind of take, okay, the average defensive position, wherever that is, and then say, okay, shortstop's harder than that, catcher's harder than that, and then all the other in first base is easier, DH is even easier. But it's not that you're having a negative effect on the team, it's that you're not adding anything offensively or defensively to your value. And so it's kind of a question of semantics, whether a DH is -1 and a shortstop is +1, or a DH is 0 and a shortstop is +2. The difference is still 2. It's just whether or not you're including negative numbers in the calculation, if that makes sense. So I guess I want to talk a little bit now about the last thing I want to talk about. And this will get a little bit more back into Dodger talk. The MVP voting is like Ohtani was, everybody knew Ohtani was going to win the MVP. And I think I was pretty confident that Aaron Judge was going to win the American League MVP. Not nearly as confident as I was about Ohtani, and that's reflected in the votes. Everybody knew that Paul Skeens and Tarik Skubal were going to win the Cy Young Awards. And, some of that is because it seems like, and we kind of touched on this last night, it seems like the voters are all kind of looking at the same data. And there are definitely some people who think that looking at data at all is part of the problem, that you should be, have the eye test, that you should be looking at the intangibles and all those things. By the way, Cole says Raleigh hit 11 home runs at DH. It's disingenuous to say he hit 60 at catcher. Yeah, he didn't hit 60 as a catcher. He did set the record for most home runs by a catcher because the previous record was like 42. So he still did hit the most for a catcher, but he didn't hit them all while playing catcher. He did play DH quite a bit. But anyway, when all the voters are looking at roughly the same data, like I mentioned last night, when I said I didn't have an issue with Yamamoto finishing third because Skeens was going to win, and I think that it was pretty clear that Christopher Sanchez was a little bit better than Yoshinobu Yamamoto this year. And when Kevin's point was, well, if he was only a little bit better, how come he got 100% of the second place votes? And for me, it's like, well, if everybody can see that he was a little bit better, then he should get all the votes. And that's where it gets maybe too predictable because, like I said, everybody's looking at the same data. And so in Cy Young, I think it's even more so because by definition, almost, you're talking about pitchers or players who play the same position. And there's starters versus relievers, but relievers really don't get a lot of love in the Cy Young voting because they shouldn't, because they don't pitch nearly as much. But Cy Young voting, it was so clear that Paul Skeens was going to win. It was so clear that Tarik Skubal was going to win. And it's not just a wins above replacement thing because Christopher Sanchez led the National League in pitcher WAR this year. He had more than Paul Skeens. Again, going back to that volume. But, when you factor in, Skeens was a better pitcher. And even though he didn't pitch as much as Sanchez, the voters decided that Skeens' quality advantage overcame Sanchez's quantity advantage. And everybody kind of knew that was going to happen. In the MVP, it's a little bit different because, like in the American League, you do have different positions, and I'm almost glad. Like I said, I kind of wish that Judge and Raleigh had ended up tied, so they both could win it. But this is what makes award season kind of fun, because you can have these arguments about, like, I'm sitting here telling you guys what I think about how value is measured, but I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm telling you, here's why I disagree with you. And maybe that's semantics too. I disagree with you, but I'm not saying you're wrong. Obviously, I think you're wrong because I have a different opinion. But I'm not the kind of person. There are very few opinions I hold so strongly that I can confidently say someone who disagrees with me is wrong. And that's why I said I would have voted for Aaron Judge. I didn't say Aaron Judge is clearly the MVP. For me, it's clear enough that if I had a vote, I would have voted for Aaron Judge. And I think it's fun that there is that to argue about. In the National League, there really wasn't, because the two front runners, I don't necessarily know that it was the two most deserving. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani deserved to win. I'm not convinced that Kyle Schwarber had the second best season in the league. I think he got the narrative going, and then he didn't slow down too much. Juan Soto started off slowly and came on strong later at the end, and his team didn't do as well. A lot of people want to factor in team success. I will never, ever, ever give even a tiny bit of consideration to team success when I'm deciding who I would vote for MVP, because MVP is an individual award, not a team award. And so I don't think that Kyle Schwarber deserves extra credit for having better teammates, or teammates who played better than Juan Soto's teammates did, which is really what you're talking about with team success. There's so many different ways that we can measure the impact that an individual player had on his team success that we don't need to factor in overall team success, because we can say, look, the Phillies won about 5 more games with Kyle Schwarber than they would have with a replacement player. And the Dodgers won about 8 more games with Shohei Ohtani than they would have with a replacement player. And, and so you look at it, and then I guess if you want to, you could go to, well, that means that the Dodgers would have fallen out of first place and maybe not even made the playoffs without Ohtani, whereas the Phillies maybe still would have without Schwarber. But even that, I just look at, it shouldn't matter, in my opinion, how good a guy's teammates were. Either way, that's not how you measure value. You measure value in how well did he play. Cole says if team success was a thing, Mike Trout never would have won an MVP. Yeah, and you've seen it both ways. And you see the argument, like there have been arguments against the Dodgers. Well, why would you vote for Freddie Freeman? I think, what was it, 2022, when Freeman and Mookie finished second and third in the MVP voting, and they won 111 games. And you could make a case that Dodgers still finished in first place, even if they didn't have, if both of those guys were gone, let alone either one of them. But that's not what it's about. It's about how well did they play. And so for me, that's what value is. And it's fun that we can have these arguments. It's fun that people can still disagree on it, because if it does get to the point, if they ever lock down WAR well enough that it actually perfectly measures how well a player played, I think it'll make award season boring and borderline unnecessary. So I think it's a useful tool when looking at it. And I think when you look at the difference in WAR between Ohtani and Schwarber, I'd be fine if it's the only tool you look at, because there's no way that anything else Schwarber could have done could have made up for the massive gap in how well they each played. But then when you get to the American League side, and there is different positions to factor in all those things, it's fun. And I'm glad that we don't have an exact measurement on how well somebody played, because you have 17 voters who believe that Aaron Judge was the best and 13 who believe that Cal Raleigh was the best. None of them are right. None of them are wrong. Aaron Judge gets the award because more of them thought he was better. That's what it boils down to. And so my little headline at the bottom of the screen that says too predictable ? I think my answer is no. But we are kind of getting that way. Cy Young Award was pretty predictable, but I don't think it necessarily had to be. I think that this year, the fact that Tarek Skubal repeated as Cy Young Award, Judge and Ohtani both repeated as MVP award winners. Skeens probably would have won the Cy Young Award last year if he had gotten called up earlier, because he pitched the best, just didn't pitch enough to earn it over Chris Sale. But he was the best pitcher last year, and then he was the best pitcher again this year. So in some ways that feels too predictable, but that's more about the players than the process. And so I think, it's just as likely that somebody who won an award this year has a down year next year or has an injury next year or something, and other guys will get lifted into the conversation. So it is a lot of fun. The offseason is fun for this sort of thing. Richie said, should the MVP winner be judged by his impact to his team? Absolutely. As long as, in my opinion, as long as you're measuring that impact by how well he played baseball, yes, absolutely. It should be that's the only thing it should be measured on, his impact to his team by how well he played baseball for that team. And that's how I would vote if I had a vote. I suspect I will never have a vote. Podcasters generally aren't high on the list of getting into the BBWAA and getting those votes. But you know what? If they ever open it up to podcasters, I'm willing to vote. Just glancing at the chat to see if there's anything else I missed. I think that's all I'm going to talk about the MVP. I do want to touch on a question that Smurfy24 Dewey posted. Jeff, thoughts on the Padres possibly being for sale? Yeah, I saw this today. I don't have a lot of thoughts, other than it's not surprising that a team that has spent probably more money than they can afford over the last several years, and the guy doing that spending unfortunately passed away. I think selling the team is one of the less surprising developments I've heard in a while. And I hope that they get a good owner that's committed to winning. Obviously, San Diego is a great market, a place that players want to live because it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It's a great, great stadium, all that stuff. Obviously, a great division to play in, a budding potential rivalry going on if they can keep trying to win. But yeah, it kind of sucks for Padres fans, I guess. But luckily, Padres fans are kind of my only issue with the Padres. Well, Padre fans and this guy. And so I don't really feel bad for Padre fans, other than one of my best friends, old college roommate, who's a Padre fan. But even he needs to learn sometimes that, choices have consequences. So yeah, I'm interested to see if it's a quick sale or if they pull an Artie Moreno and end up not selling. I'm interested to see if they start making player moves based on the potential sale, trying to get out from under some of these long-term contracts, But for right now, I don't really honestly have a ton of thoughts other than, well, that's interesting. Swell and Sasha says, is it true that Skeens wants to be a Yankee, or is that just talk to drive the price up? Excuse me. I don't think it would be talk to drive the price up, because there's no price right now, because he's not a free agent and the Pirates aren't going to seriously consider trading him right now. So it would be planning really far in ahead if they're, looking at 4 years before free agency, start trying to get that Yankee talk going. So I suspect that Paul Skeens, like a lot of baseball fans, grew up thinking, wow, the Yankees are a cool organization. That would be fun to play for. I don't know. I've never met Paul Skeens, probably never will. But, it wouldn't be shocking. Plenty of players grew up wanting to play for the Yankees at some point. RJM says, I don't think the Dodgers will let Shohei pitch in the WBC. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting dynamic because it's not really up to the Dodgers, but they can definitely make requests. And but also we know the WBC is very important to a lot of people. Shohei Ohtani did say today that his goal is to be healthy enough to pitch the whole season next year. And so it'll be a version of Shohei that we haven't really seen, doing that for a full season. We saw it for a half a season this year, but seeing it for a full season, it'll be interesting to see what his offense is like, if it takes more days off on offense, all those things. But yeah, the WBC could definitely come into play for it too. Alex Renteria says Jeff read a non-super chat from Richie. Eyeballs emoji. Yeah, hey, I told Richie, just put better chats in the comments in the chat, and then I'll read them. So, but I'll definitely read any super chats. Haven't any super chats tonight, guys. I'm starting to take this personally. Charlie Stokes says, I agree with your opinion about Aaron Judge being the MVP. Let's see. Richie says he likes the postseason award talk. Nice break from the free agent and trade talk. Yeah, there's not much going on. Like there was one report from Bob Nightingale that Devin Williams might want to play in the Midwest, and so maybe go to the Cardinals, and so the Dodgers might turn to Pete Fairbanks instead. I don't know that it would be an instead thing. I could see them getting Fairbanks and Williams, or Fairbanks and, probably. I really don't think Edwin Diaz is probably going to come to the Dodgers between his asking price and the qualifying offer. But I could see the Dodgers signing a couple of these good relievers. They went with Pete Fairbanks and Robert Suarez. So I don't think it necessarily one would preclude them signing the other. Just scrolling through the chat, seeing if there's anything else I need to hop in. Devin says trade for Mike Trout. You know what? I'm on board. I love Mike Trout. I've said before, like when the Dodgers got Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and Shohei Ohtani, I felt like it was just for me because they were three of my favorite players before they were Dodgers. And Mike Trout definitely fits that mold too. I'm a huge Mike Trout fan. Obviously, the health situation hasn't been good the last several years, and even his performance last year wasn't super good, but the tools are still there. Obviously, he's getting older. But yeah, if Artie Moreno didn't want to make minor trades with the Dodgers, hard to see him making a major trade with the Dodgers. Let's see. Cole says Paul Skeens said the story about the Yankees wasn't true. I didn't see that. Honestly, I only think about Paul Skeens when the Dodgers are playing the Pirates for the most part. Or, yesterday when he won an award, I thought, oh yeah, Paul Skeens, that's a good player. But I like Paul Skeens just fine, but I don't think about him much. So I don't follow the news very much there. Ken asks a good question. If it was close between two players, would voters ever discuss intangibles such as leadership, positivity in the clubhouse, etc.? First of all, yes, voters, even if it's not close, I think voters take all this stuff into account. I'm saying I wouldn't if I were a voter, because I don't think that the voters have enough insight into those things to measure them. And I think usually the guys who are like that are more guys like Miguel Rojas, who, are the emotional leaders and aren't good enough to be in the conversation. But yeah, I mean, if you had two guys with very, very similar stats, and one guy is a known clubhouse cancer and the other guy is a known clubhouse opposite of cancer, Gemini. Yeah, I think that would be absolutely valid. I don't know that there's ever been a case where the vote was that tight. Usually it's like 1979 when Willie Stargell got so much intangible leadership clubhouse cred that he tied Keith Hernandez despite not having nearly as good a season on the field. And that's where I just don't think that that's right. I don't think the intangibles can make up for that big a gap in the actual playing ability, playing performance. BC mentions it's Yamamoto who needs the most time off, more than Ohtani. Yeah, and in different ways, because Ohtani hasn't pitched a full season in the big leagues in a few years, whereas Yamamoto pitched like a full season plus. And so they need rest for different reasons. Nando asked, Jeff, do you think the Padres will have a liquidation sale on players now that they're selling the team? I expect it to have an impact on their baseball operations. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Fernando Tatis ended up on the trading block, because he has a long contract and he's good enough that there might be teams willing to take that contract off their hands. I think they would love to trade Manny Machado. I don't think that's a possibility. Guys like that, who Xander Bogaerts, these long contracts that the players aren't necessarily living up to. Tatis is young enough and talented enough that I think there is a lot of appeal there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tatis got traded. And I don't know if the Padres will go into full-on rebuild mode. I just don't think that's really likely. But I think that to maximize the investment, blah, 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 all those things, long-term contracts play into that. So, I think we'll see it affect it. Alexander Rose says, Jeff looks handsome tonight. Filthy lie, but I appreciate it. Let's see what else. Hey, $1.99 super chat from Swollen Sausage. Okay, here's the super chat, Jeff. Hey, appreciate it, man. You forgot a digit or two in that amount, but we'll take it. $1.99 is better than nothing. How much better? $1.99 more. By the way, did you hear? Pennies don't exist anymore. I mean, they still exist, but they're not being made anymore. It's kind of interesting. 300 years of pennies and now 250 years of pennies-ish. No more pennies in the United States, so that's interesting. Let's see, just trying to catch up to the chat, see if there's anything else here. I'm not in a big hurry to get out of here, and got a good group here. Dad Braves, my buddy Mike, says, will all Dodgers have players on to interview during the offseason? That's the plan. We're working on having some, we've got a lot of thoughts about this offseason, and we're definitely hoping to have a player or 3 or 4 on the show. Definitely get Steven Nelson on again sometime. That was a lot of fun. Always like talking with him. Probably hopefully get Joe Davis on at some point. So that's the goal. Nothing is scheduled yet. I don't have anything far enough, locked in to even say any names of players who might be on, but we'll definitely get a player or 2 or more on here this off season. Excuse me. I don't know how to pronounce this one, but this guy says, does it really matter where Paul Skeens wants to go? Not like he has a say in where the Pirates trade him to. And that's absolutely the case. Only matters where Paul Skeens wants to go once he gets free agency or signs an extension with a no trade clause. At that point, then it matters where he wants to go. Until then, it doesn't matter at all. BC says Tatis to the Dodgers. I already touched on that last week, so I won't bring that up again. Devin says, I love the reference to Gemini being the opposite of Cancer. Yeah, I just know I'm a Gemini, and my cousin was a Cancer, and so I just kind of think of them as opposites because I know they're right next to each other. Insert Silly Handle says, I'll take Bo Bichette. We talked a little bit about that yesterday. I don't hate that idea. Ray Soto says Frank McCourt can buy the Padres. Go get them. And they're currently owned by the O'Malley family, former Dodger owners. So let another former Dodger owner go buy it. Cole says San Diego has over $1 billion in committed payroll. That will impact a potential sale. Yeah, that's where you might start getting creative to get people off the books if necessary. But also, potential owners coming in are going to want to win. And so you're not just going to trade everybody of any value. Problem is the money that's owed to people who aren't super valuable at this point. That's the big issue for the Padres right now, I think. Another super chat from IB Stroken, $5. Here's another, Jeff. Hey, appreciate it. Rep $6.99, baby. Hashtag math. Yeah, there were reports that the Padres are in debt and losing money. I think that is more a negotiating ploy for the upcoming CBA negotiations, because the fact is, every time a Major League Baseball team goes up for sale, rich people all over the world line up to buy it. And that would not be the case if teams were really losing as much money as teams lie about losing. So I'm not buying that one. Man, there's a lot going on. in this chat. So sorry, I can't keep up with it better. Don Kim points out it costs more to make a penny than it's worth. Yeah, I think I read that pennies cost 3 cents to make. So yeah, it definitely stopped making sense to keep making them a while back, especially since you can't buy anything with a penny. So just bump everything to the nearest nickel and call it a day. Craig Osterberg asks, will Andrew Friedman be executive of the year? I doubt it. I don't think Dodgers are going to win any awards like that because, money bias, jealousy, whatever you want to call it. And Alex Renteria is talking about the Padres relocating to Portland or Oakland. Yeah, I don't see that. San Diego is supporting their team right now. It hasn't always been the case, but they are currently supporting their team, and so I think they'll stick around. Charlie Stokes asked me how I became a Dodger fan. I was born into it. My dad grew up in actually La Puente, where Clint lives, and when my dad was 4, the Dodgers moved to LA, and being proud Angelinos, the Sniders became a Dodger family at that point. My grandpa was originally from Arkansas. He grew up a Cardinals fan and was a Cardinals fan until 1957 when the Dodgers moved to LA, and then Grandpa and the rest of the family became Dodger fans, except for my Uncle Jim, who is 4 years older than my dad. So he was 8 years old and had already chosen Willie Mays as his favorite player and the Giants as his favorite team when they were still in New York. And so to this day, Uncle Jim is still the lone Giants fan in a family of Dodger fans. Even his children are Dodger fans. They, grew up right. The influence of extended family was stronger than the influence of their dad, and growing up mostly in Southern California. So the whole family is Dodger fans. I was born 20 years later, born into a Dodger family, and never looked back. So thank you for that question. Noah says, Jeff, Geoff, typically you wear white, gray, or blue shirts, #everydayer. Typically it's Clint that wears dark clothes. Are you wearing a mask? I think I don't know if this is a faded black or a dark navy blue. It might be black. Yeah, I most of my shirts are Dodger shirts, or at least Dodger blue. Then I have that one shirt that I really like. My favorite shirt is gray with the darker gray sleeves, and it's a Brooklyn Dodgers shirt. But yeah, this shirt actually, I went through my dresser last week, over the weekend, because I have too many clothes that I didn't wear. And most of it's because from back when I weighed less than I do, or back when I weighed more than I do. And so I went through to say, okay, what am I actually, there was a neighbor of ours was doing a clothing drive for a homeless shelter or something here in the area. And so I was going through, okay, what clothes do I have that are in good condition that I'm never going to wear again? That was my, my reason for going through my clothes. And this is a shirt that I found. I'm like, oh, this thing fits great and it's in good condition. It's been at the bottom of the drawer, so I haven't worn it in months. So I had a handful of those things, threw them in the washing machine, and put them back in the rotation. So that's why I'm wearing this particular shirt, Noah. And I will ignore how creepy it is that you pay attention to what I'm wearing. But no, just joking. I appreciate the question. BC says the last thing MLB needs is expansion. Offensive numbers are already super low. That'll just mean more guys who can't take up roster spots. I don't necessarily think that. I think right now, I think expansion would probably help offense a little bit because it would spread out the pitching talent more. And so you would have more, fewer guys on each team who, are elite relievers. Because I think that's the big thing. That's why it's just the fact that every relief pitcher throws, almost as hard as Nolan Ryan. And it's crazy. So I don't think that expansion would make the offense worse. I think if anything, it would make it a little bit better. Of course, I would be in favor of changing the roster rules to limit even more how many pitchers can be on the roster, at any given time, because I think that would help offense too. I say go to a 27-man roster with only 12 pitchers allowed, so you have 15 position players, because then you could have guys who, a Jock Peterson type who can only hit right-handed pitching, and you could have a Justin Dean type who is only there to pinch run and play defense, and you would increase how often, fewer pitchers means that starters would have to go deeper in games. Relievers might have to hold back a little bit, knowing I might have to go 2 innings tonight. All those things would help offense, and you would increase the percentage of the time that the offense had the platoon advantage, because if you have a Jock Peterson who is only on the bench to hit righties and you bring in a righty reliever, well, then you got Jock Peterson coming up, so that sort of thing. That would be my preference, but I don't think expansion will have a strong impact on that, but I could be wrong. And man, the chats just keep on coming in. I appreciate you guys. Raul Robles says, how much money of champ gear did you drop? I have not spent a penny yet. I think I explained this once before, but what I do, I have put several things on my Christmas list, because my wife gets mad at me when I buy anything for myself this late in the year, when it's potential Christmas gifts, but also because I have to get any t-shirts I want to get or jerseys are limited to what's available in the big and tall sections. And, so that's a challenge. Any hats I want, I have 3 hats on my list, but I have a huge head. And so I can't just go to Fanatics and order a hat, because my hat, they only go up to size 8, and mine is 8 1/8. And so I have a website, hatland.com, that sells hats for people with monstrous heads like mine. And, but only a couple of them, I think only one right now, the World Series hat is available in my size, but not the World Series Champions hat. So I've put both of them on my list, hoping that the other one will become available in my size. But before Christmas. After Christmas, I might think about, spending some money on championship gear if I didn't get everything I wanted for Christmas. Alex Renteria says, Jeff, now the season is over, how do you spend your time? I have watched the recap of Game 7. How long has it been? It's been, almost 2 weeks now? 12 days since the Dodgers won the World Series. I've probably watched that recap 35 times. So I do that somewhat. One day I went through and I watched the recaps of all 13 Dodgers postseason wins. That took about an hour. But I try to take a little bit of a break from sports. I mean, obviously I'm still doing the podcast, still focusing on baseball, but I don't pay much attention to other sports because I think I spend so much time on baseball that I think my wife and kids deserve an off season. I have, a couple little part-time gigs and stuff that I do. Like today, I spent most of the day out and about. One of the things I do is my wife works at an assisted living home, and she is the director of health services there. And one of the things they offer to their residents is driving them to doctor's appointments and whatnot on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And a few months ago, the person who did those drives went on maternity leave, and so I took over that job. So that's just something I do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So today I spent most of my day driving senior citizens to dentist appointments and having a blast doing that. So yeah, that's I do that on Tuesdays and Thursdays and do a lot of other things. Richie says, I noticed how you never wear that All Dodgers podcast t-shirt. I got you. No, but I did get it out of my trunk, Richie. It is inside my house now. So that's progress. But it's only got Clint's face on it. My face isn't on it. So it's like, I don't know. We are working on adding my face to the logo. We have the cartoonified version of my face. Looks slightly like me. But so yeah, we'll have the updated logo. Then maybe I'll get a shirt with that logo on it, and maybe I'll actually wear it once in a while. Maybe I'll even put this one on once in a while, but I haven't yet. But it is out of my trunk. So that only took like a year to get it out of the trunk of my car. Cole says less pitchers is not the answer if you're worried about pitching injuries. Here's my dirty little secret. I am not worried about pitching injuries. Could not care less. I think that is nature's way of healing, of balancing things. And so it's not my job to be worried about pitchers getting hurt. It's pitchers' jobs and teams' jobs. And so, yeah, if enough pitchers get hurt that they say maybe we shouldn't throw 106 miles an hour every pitch, then maybe injuries go down. But I also think if pitchers didn't get hurt, the balance would be even more out of whack towards the pitchers, because you would have, even, you think of all the good pitchers who are down with Tommy John surgery right now. If all those guys were active, they would be bumping off the few lesser relievers that there are. And so it would be more imbalance. I don't, like, from an individual standpoint, I don't want any Dodgers pitchers to get hurt, obviously. And I don't wish any ill will on any particular pitcher necessarily. But in general, the general concept of pitcher injuries, I don't care at all, honestly. It's maybe the closest thing I have to a hot take. I don't believe in hot takes, but a couple times that I've said that out loud, people have looked at me like it was a hot take. So maybe it is. But yeah, I don't care about pitcher injuries. Craig Osterberg asked, what's the most appealing part of living in Utah? For other people, it's being near me. No, I love Utah. I've been here. I moved up here. I was born and raised, lived in the same house my whole life in Lake Elsinore until I graduated high school and came up here to go to college at BYU. And I've basically been here ever since. I was at BYU for 2 semesters. Then I went on a mission for my church for 2 years. And I was home for like a month before my mission and a couple months after my mission. But then I was back here in Utah, back at BYU. I took a break from BYU for a while, and then I took another break when BYU asked me to take a break because I was what you call not a great student. And yeah, eventually met my wife, and her family was in Dallas and mine was in California. And so we just said, let's stay in Utah. And, got a good job here that I worked at for over a decade and loved and had a good career. And yeah, so I just love it here. It's beautiful. I live literally a mile from the mountains. My boys just bought their ski passes. They can get to a ski resort, Sundance Ski Resort, in 20 minutes from where we live. There's 8 other ski resorts within an hour drive, but they mostly go to Sundance because it's the closest and the most affordable for teenage boys. So yeah, it's beautiful. Good schools, relatively good economy. Every time I buy gas in California, I'm reminded that I prefer buying gas here. So a lot of appealing parts of living in Utah. I really like it here. I still think of myself as a Californian. I still remember my California driver's license number, B3951822. I don't know my Utah driver's license number, even though I've had my Utah license for 20 something years now. But I never did learn this number, but I still remember the California driver's license that I had for like 6 years. Tim G says, hey, Jeff, do you think there will be a big trade this offseason? I do. I don't know what, don't know who, but I think the Dodgers are going to be active on the trade market. Let's see. What else? Sorry, just looking through the chat, trying to see if there's anything else I need to answer before we wrap this up. We already got past the 67-minute mark, coming up on 69 minutes. I'm not stopping at that one because I'm a mature adult, not a child. BC says, I like last year's celebration shirt and hat during the trophy ceremony more. I do have, my son has last year's celebration hat. I got one, and those snapbacks never fit my huge head, and so I gave it to my son, and he loves it. I did like that one more. Alex says, you're keeping busy, Jeff. Your off-season task is to convert all those Mormons to Dodger fans. There's a lot of Dodger fans here, honestly. Like, there's a lot of Braves fans for sure. Between TBS and Dale Murphy, a lot of people who grew up here in Utah are Braves fans. I mentioned my roommate from college who grew up here in Utah, who's a Padres fan. I don't remember why he chose the Padres. It was just a random choice because Utah doesn't have a team, and so he chose the Padres. And back then that was a defensible choice. Tony Gwynn, all that stuff. But now It's the results of, but yeah. So there's Braves fans. There's a lot of Red Sox and Yankees fans just because there's Red Sox and Yankee fans everywhere. A lot of Cubs fans here because of WGN and because Cubs are popular everywhere. But there are a lot of Dodger fans. Even before this, like, I'm still the guy, like, I think everybody around here thinks of me as the Dodger guy. But there are a lot of us, quite a few. If you know Scott Warner on Twitter, Scott is a good buddy of mine here. There's Lindsay Adams, LA Tweets on Twitter. She's up in Ogden, about an hour north of me. She's a big Dodger fan. Some of my favorite people who I met through this podcast, Heather and Trevor Jensen, live just 20 minutes south of me. They listen to my podcast. I found out they were here in Utah County, and we become really good friends since then. So yeah, there's a lot of Dodger fans here. But you know, I'm the biggest Dodger fan, if for no other reason than that I am the biggest person. So, this is a good question. Cole asked, does Fernando Valenzuela make the Hall of Fame? Fernando is on the Veterans Committee ballot this year. I feel like Fernando will eventually get in. For me, like, from a career standpoint, I just don't think he makes the cut. But I also think it's called the Hall of Fame. And there are very few players as famous as Fernando Valenzuela for a lot of different reasons. And so for me, like, I was actually looking, and all 8 people on this Veterans Committee ballot, I think I would be inclined to say, yeah, he probably belongs in the Hall of Fame. You know, obviously Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens have their and Gary Sheffield, they have their baggage. Jeff Kent is more borderline from a baseball standpoint to me, but all of them, like, I think if I was voting right now, you know, and I was trying to decide which 2 guys to vote for, I would be deciding between Don Mattingly, Dale Murphy, and Fernando Valenzuela. Those are the 3 that I think should go in next. And I know for sure I would vote for Dale Murphy. I think Dale Murphy was on track to be a Hall of Fame player. Injuries derailed him. Same thing can be said for Don Mattingly. They're both the same story. Honestly, same thing can be said for Fernando, except the injuries derailed him much younger, and then he hung around longer as a mediocre pitcher longer. Murphy and Mattingly were no doubt future Hall of Famers when they were at their peaks, and then they just fell off a cliff because of injuries. But Murph especially, I'm a huge Dale Murphy fan. I've gotten to know him a little bit over the years. I texted him when Freddie Freeman was a free agent and said, hey, put a bug in Freddie's ear and tell him the Dodgers want him. I think Dale Murphy, there are so many people who lose Hall of Fame votes for the character clause. And I think Dale Murphy deserves to gain a couple for the character clause. He is possibly one of the best dudes ever to play baseball. Just a great, great person. And so borderline statistically, probably doesn't quite make it statistically, but for me, the quality of person would bump him up. Plus the peak, you know, the back-to-back MVPs, Gold Gloves, comes up as a catcher and ends up a Gold Glove center fielder. How ridiculous is that? You know, all that stuff. I'd for sure vote for Dale Murphy, and then I'd decide between Mattingly or Fernando for my second vote. That's where I would be at if I were a voter right now. Beverly asks, anyone else watching the MLB Awards show? Mookie is co-hosting. He looks like $1 million. No, they're not watching. They're watching this. I don't look as good as Mookie ever. I did see Mookie, you know, saw that he was looking good. I can't imagine watching an awards show, even a baseball awards show. Let's see. Oso says, Jeff, we need Tommy Pham. Prove me wrong. I can't prove you wrong. I can strongly disagree with you. I don't think Tommy Pham brings enough to the table from a baseball standpoint to make up for the fact that he's just a piece of garbage. And you know, I'm willing to put up with a piece of garbage. Like, I was happy when the Dodgers traded for Manny Machado in 2018. Manny Machado helped them get to the World Series. Didn't help them win it. Helped them get there. Dodgers don't get as far in 2018 without Manny Machado. he was a piece of garbage before he came to the Dodgers. He's been a piece of garbage since he left the Dodgers, but I was okay with that. Tommy Pham is no Manny Machado on the baseball field. Doesn't bring nearly enough to the party to make up for just being a lousy person. Ken Wolcott says, I can't believe Bobby Grich is not in, or is he now? No, Bobby Grich is not in. My son, Logan, actually, I think it was when he was in 7th or 8th grade, and he just graduated this year. So, 4 or 5 years ago, he actually did a paper. For his English class, he had to do I forget he had to choose any topic that he was passionate about and write a paper about it. And he had to interview experts about it. And so what he ended up choosing, he talked to me, he said, Dad, I want to do something about baseball, maybe a Hall of Fame person. Give me a list of some guys who you think maybe should be in the Hall of Fame and aren't. And I mentioned Bobby Grich and Lou Whitaker and, Dale Murphy, a handful of guys. And he kind of looked into them and he chose Bobby Grich, and I put him in touch with Jay Jaffe, who is a big proponent of Bobby Grich to the Hall of Fame. And Logan sat at this very desk I'm sitting at and got on a Zoom call with Jay Jaffe. It was during 2020. So 5 years ago. And interviewed him about Bobby Grich and wrote his paper about why Bobby Grich should be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, Bobby Grich is one of those guys who was underappreciated at his time. And it's only looking back, you're like, man, that dude did just about everything well. And if Bobby Grich was on the ballot, he would absolutely get my vote. But he is not on this year's veterans ballot. Tim asks on the veterans ballot how many they're allowed to vote for. I think each voter can only vote for 2. It might be 3, but I think it's only 2. Richie says Fernando changed the Latino culture, not just in LA, but the entire country. It was the American dream before our eyes. He brought back the Mexican community to Dodger Stadium. Yeah, and that's, that's a lot of what I'm talking about. Like, great pitcher on the field whose career of greatness was way too short and then long mediocrity, but his impact off the field in LA and around baseball was just so big that for me, like, if you're going to call it the Hall of Fame, yeah, Fernando should be in it because the fame part is right there. Ken says, if jerk Burt Blyleven got in, any jerk can get in. I've met Burt Blyleven twice. I don't think of him as a jerk. He hasn't been a jerk to me. I know his son, not really well, but his son Todd played for the Lake Elsinore Storm when I was in high school. Todd and I actually became pretty good friends. And Todd, I don't know if you guys know this about Todd Blyleven. He was at the Jason Aldean concert in Las Vegas, where the shooting happened back in, when was that, 2017, I think. Anyway, Todd got out with his wife and then went back in 10 times and carried people out of the concert. And he does a podcast now where he talks to other survivors of things like that, different things. And really, Todd's a great dude. And Burt, I met Burt Blyleven one time when Todd was playing in Lake Elsinore. Burt came to watch him play. My thing back then, I was, a senior in high school, and I always had a duffel bag full of blow pops with me. And I would go to the games, and every player on the Storm, when they were warming up, they would come and get a blow pop from me and warm up with a blow pop in their mouth. And so I actually have somewhere, I don't know where, but somewhere nearby, I actually have a Lake Elsinore Storm ticket stub from 1995, autographed by Burt Blyleven, that says, Jeff, thanks for the sucker, Burt Blyleven. Anyway, and then the other time I met Burt Blyleven was at the winter meetings in 2018, probably. And when they were in Vegas, I think it was 2018, I met him and talked to him. I reminded him about the blow pop in Lake Elsinore, and I told him I knew his son. We ended up talking. It was kind of interesting because it was in Vegas, and so we were standing like 200 yards from where that shooting had taken place that his son was involved in. Anyway, Burt Blyleven's always been really nice to me. I don't know much about him beyond that. Let's see. Beverly assures me she's watching me and the award show at the same time. And that's all I need, I guess. Oso says that Tommy Pham's got moxie and fire, and the team needs that. I disagree on both counts. Yeah, Dodgers have won back-to-back World Series. I don't know if you heard about that, but I don't know that they are in need of moxie and fire in the form of Tommy Pham. And Snafu says, dang, Jeff Rose doing a long stream solo. Yeah, you know what? A lot of good comments, and I figure people are still here. I'll just keep talking about the Dodgers and, whatever else you guys want to talk about. Don Kim says Tommy Pham would be a great enforcer for the Dodgers and would have put Jimenez in his place. And that's a good example of why I don't want Tommy Pham. I think that whole brouhaha comes to blows, and people get ejected and suspended if Tommy Pham is on the team. I think the Dodgers had one guy, Justin Robleski, to be the hothead, and they had enough guys to keep Robleski from getting ejected, and the Blue Jays had enough guys to keep Jimenez from getting ejected. For all intents and purposes, if you're going to have a bench clearing incident in the World Series, I think that was about perfect because cooler heads prevailed, and cooler heads and Tommy Pham do not go well together. So I am not interested in that. Ray Soto says Pham shows up in October. I'm guessing that is selective memory from that one series against the Dodgers when he was on the Diamondbacks. But let's see. His career OPS in the postseason is 823. His career OPS in the regular season is 766. So yeah, he has been better in the postseason. He has had some really good series and some really bad series. For example, against the Dodgers in the division series in 2023, he had an OPS over 1,000. And then in the next series against the Phillies, he had an OPS of 350. He went 2 for 20. So that's most of the time. Most players are about the same player in the postseason that they are in the regular season. He's, a little bit better in the postseason, but not, I am off the, I've never been on the Tommy Pham train, never considered being on the Tommy Pham train, and never would be. Ray says, just don't let Pham join the fantasy football league. Yeah, he's a baby. Robles says Byron Buxton or bust. Yeah, we've talked about Buxton several times this week, and we'll keep talking about him because I think he's a very real possibility for the Dodgers. Let's see. This username that I don't know how to pronounce, so I'll just call him G, says, absent the culture phenomenon that was Fernando Mania, I just don't know if his numbers warrant Hall of Fame consideration. If so, then you can make an argument for Hershiser as well. Yeah, I think on the numbers, Hershiser has a better argument than Fernando does. But for absent the cultural phenomenon, yeah, that's kind of my point, that because the culture, the fame aspect of things, I think that gives Fernando a boost a little bit. And I would guess that he will eventually end up in the War of Fame, in the Hall of Fame, the War of Fame. I wonder what I just read somewhere, something, it's hard to talk and read at the same time. Charlie Stokes says Don Mattingly and Dale Murphy never won the World Series. Fernando Valenzuela did. Yeah. Winning the World Series is a team accomplishment. Doesn't have any bearing for me on Hall of Fame. Another way that baseball is different than other sports because one player can't carry a team the way they can in other sports. Like Yamamoto was the World Series MVP, and you could say he carried the team, but also you point to the contributions of a dozen other guys as being almost as important. So yeah, the team accomplishments don't factor for me in Hall of Fame voting at all. Let's see. Ken says, nice to know that, Jeff. Of course, I only go by what was reported at the time about Bert. Yeah, and he may have been surly with reporters, and that's kind of that. Most of the guys who have reputations as being jerks, really what it means is that they didn't like talking to reporters. And I think there's a difference between a jerk and somebody who doesn't like talking to reporters. Snafu says, Jeff's a man of the people. We appreciate you. Hey, I appreciate you right back. You guys could appreciate me in the form of super chats or something if you wanted to. Ken mentions that Muncy kept Robo from being ejected in that game. Ray says the Dodgers have too many nice guys. Jarren Duran fits. Yeah, I don't think they have too many nice guys. I don't agree with you on that. I think that as long as the nice guys are hitting and pitching well, I don't care. And it is easier for me to root for likable people. Like the fact that Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani are three of the most likable players in baseball and also great hitters for my favorite team makes me very happy. And on the pitch side, like, how do you not like Yoshinobu Yamamoto? It's just, I like likable guys. It's kind of the definition of the word likable, I guess. And then you've got guys like, Raul mentions Max Muncy is the moxie of the team. Muncy is a guy who I can understand. Like, for me as a Dodger fan, I love the dude. I can understand if you don't like the Dodgers, looking at Muncy and like not liking him. I don't understand hating him, but I can understand not liking him. And that's fine, but that's as much as we need, I think. I don't think we need somebody like Tommy Pham. What do you mean, you people? Rocky Rivera asks, are we concerned about the Japanese team overusing our Japanese players during the WBC? I'm not. I think that they will factor in these guys' careers and all of that. The specifics, I'm interested to see how it all works out, but I'm not overly worried about it. $4.99 super chat from Ray Soto for the one-man show. I appreciate you, Ray. This is, I like one-man shows. I actually texted Vince, my old podcast partner on my old show, but he wasn't available this evening, so I was going to see if he wanted to come talk Dodgers with me for a while. He and I have done almost 2,000 podcast episodes together over the last decade, and so it would have been fun to do one, but probably going to try to get Vince on at some point this offseason and talk about it a little bit. I always enjoy talking with Vince. Let's see. Noah says, I can see the Padres trading Fernando Tatis on one condition. They take Xander Bogaerts as well. Yeah, Padres won't be in a position to put those sort of conditions on a trade. If they get a taker for Bogaerts, they would jump at it, but I don't think that's going to happen. Raul says, retire number 55 Dodgers. Apparently Raul is a huge Skip Schumacher fan. What's funnier, Skip Schumacher or who was the other one? Russell Martin. No, obviously he's talking about Orel Hershiser. Yeah, now that they've retired Fernando's number, I'm interested to see if they get a little bit looser on that. We talked about that in just timing-wise with Kershaw, but with guys like, Orel and, Steve Garvey, guys like that. But I'm guessing they won't. I think Fernando was probably an exception, and they won't make many other exceptions. Cole says, Jeff, with the 39 men on the 40-man roster, Dodgers will add players. Who goes? Yeah, there's still guys on the 40-man roster who could definitely be on the chopping block this offseason. Just looking at, maybe not so many guys who they might actually just DFA and cut. I think they've mostly gotten through all of those just looking at the list now. But Nick Frasso is maybe going to get traded. Like guys like that, I think they might have some tough decisions to make, because Paul Gervais, a guy they just got who shows some promise, but maybe they don't want him on the 40-man roster, so he might have to get DFA'd and try to sneak him through waivers or something. Because they will have to make some moves this offseason in order to add players, but that's another part of the reason why I've said I think they're more likely to make their moves via trade, because then sometimes you do some of that addition, subtraction stuff at the same time. If you trade Nick Frasso and Kyle Hurt for a guy, you've just made his roster spot and opened up an extra one too. Just throwing out, they were the two pitcher names I saw of guys who it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to get traded. Not that I have any inside info that those two guys are going anywhere. So the roster will be very interesting to watch this offseason for sure. Let's see. Snafu says, after watching all the Jays reactions and their media after the series, I like the Jays and their fans much less now. I haven't seen anything from the Blue Jays themselves that I've disliked. I saw an interview with Davis Snider where a reporter tried to bait him, said, so, obviously you guys were the better team. You outplayed the Dodgers, do you feel like you should have won? And he said, if we had outplayed them, we would have won. He gets it. I think the players get it. Obviously they're disappointed, and I don't have any issue with a player being disappointed in losing a heartbreaking series like that. I think a lot of Blue Jays fans have been almost unbearable, and that's not super fun. But the actual players themselves, I don't have an issue with, and fans, I don't expect that much from fans, and so I don't mind fans reacting poorly to a heartbreaking series loss. Even when it's annoying and they're illogical but yeah, overall, I don't begrudge them too much. G says, Jeff, what are your thoughts on geographical realignment? I just think it would only create a massive division imbalance if based purely on geography. I absolutely don't like the idea of radical realignment. I think if they do expand to 32 teams, there will be some realignment, but I do not want that to be, the Western Conference and Eastern Conference like the NBA has. I'm not in favor of that. I think that the Dodgers and Giants need to remain in the same division. I hope that if Salt Lake gets a team, it's an American League team so that I can root for them and they can be my American League team. I'll be a Dodger fan, but I'll get season tickets to the Salt Lake, whatever you want to call them. But I hope they're in the American League. So yeah, I want it to remain American League and National League, and I want it to be, I don't want geographic realignment. Don't know if there's any other way to say that. Ken says, are the Dodgers traveling overseas somewhere to play in March this year? No, they are not. Thank goodness. I don't know if anybody is. I think with the WBC, maybe the baseball is not starting in a foreign country this year. But I haven't paid much attention. I will only care about the Dodgers schedule, so. Jenny says the Padres should trade Machado, not Tatis. Well, like I said, Machado's contract is not nearly as tradable as Tatis's because Machado is a decade older, and Machado's not going anywhere unless the Padres eat a whole bunch of that money, and that can be said for a lot of the Padres players, unfortunately for them. Let's see. See a lot of people talking about the Lakers. I don't know anything about the Lakers, so I'm not going to talk about that. I assume Byron Scott's not still on the team, or Kurt Rambis. Let's see. Rocky says, aren't we concerned if we trade some starting pitchers and it impacts the health of our starting pitchers in the playoffs? Concerned about Glasnow and Snell being fatigued during the playoffs. I think there's a middle ground there because the Dodgers have like 12 starting pitchers. And so I think you can trade a few of them and still easily do a 6-man rotation, even when Glasnow needs a month off here and Snell needs a month off there. So I think they'll be all right. Raul says, I wouldn't be surprised if Kike and Miggy wait until spring training to sign when the 60-day IL slots open up again. That's what Kike did last year. I'm trying to think of guys, just looking at the list here. I don't know if the Dodgers have a ton of guys who are likely to start the year on the 60-day IL. I guess Evan Phillips will start the year on the 60-day IL. Probably. I can't remember when Phillips had his surgery, actually, now that I think about it. But now that Tony Gonsolin's gone, they don't have that to fall back on. Brock Stewart, I don't think they think that his shoulder surgery was so major that he'll be on the 60-day. I don't remember the exact timing of Gavin. Like Gavin Stone was, I assume they're planning on Gavin Stone being back early in the season. River Ryan, probably the same. So yeah, I don't know that they will have a ton of, obviously injuries can happen between now and then. But I'm not seeing anybody who's jumping out at me as being a 60-day IL guy as soon as that opens up in March or February. So that Might not be a possibility this time. I guess we'll see. $1.99 super chat from Nicole Taylor. What's the upkeep on your bobbleheads? Any favorites? The upkeep is nothing. Like, honestly, they probably all need to be dusted. I don't. I don't live in earthquake zone, so I don't have to worry about them falling off the shelves. They're just, it's just not an issue. As for my favorites, I have a lot of favorites. I have a lot of bobbleheads that I love. I actually got one in the mail just today from Charlie O, who reached out to me on Twitter and asked if I had this one, the Fernando Valenzuela one. Speaking of the devil, this Fernando bobblehead, and I said I don't, and so he mailed this to me. So I appreciate that. That one just came today, so I haven't even taken it out of the box yet, but it'll go up on the shelf. I've got a couple other Fernandos that I'll have to. I try to group them together. So yeah, I probably need to go through and kind of reorganize all of them because, like you can see up here over my right shoulder, I've got some Dustin Mays there. And now that he's not on the team anymore, maybe he doesn't need that prominent spot anymore. I think this is Alex Verdugo over here, down there. Anyway, so, but yeah, there's a lot of good ones. The ones you can't quite see, that top shelf, all my Kershaws, all my Vin Scullys are up there. Some Tommy Lasordas, I think. Oh, no, Tommy is right above my head, right there. But yeah, a lot of good bobbleheads. I like them a lot. One of the only things I miss about having season tickets is I don't get the bobbleheads anymore. So the last 3 seasons since I stopped having season tickets, I've been hit and miss on those bobbleheads. I probably only have 30% of the bobbleheads they've given away in the last 3 seasons, after having 100% of the ones they gave away in the 10 seasons that I did have season tickets. So that's it's the only thing I miss. The headache of trying to sell tickets when you live 661 miles from the stadium. Having season tickets isn't the most practical thing to do, but it was fun while it lasted. Let's see. G says, I give the Blue Jays fans a break. They're not used to winning or losing big games. Yeah, I'm inclined to give all fans a break for a period. If Blue Jays fans are still this clueless come February, I'll probably just say, okay, you guys are bad now. Let's see. BC says, I thought John Schneider, the manager, said they should have swept them. I know the player Davis Schneider said they weren't the better team. I think that John Schneider quote was fabricated. I don't know that for sure, but I don't think that Schneider said anything like that. Noah says, what postseason was your favorite to watch? 2020, 2024, or 2025? I don't know. This one was so different. And I told you guys, I've been watching the recap of Game 7 a lot. And I got to tell you, and I probably mentioned this that night, the home run by Miguel Rojas was one of the most surreal moments of my baseball watching life. Like, I genuinely did not believe that it had happened. Like, I was just I was hoping Rojas could work a walk to get on base for Ohtani. And I had already said to myself, well, at least, there's only one out. So at least if he gets out, Ohtani still has a chance to tie the game. I didn't want it to come to that. I wanted Rojas to get on base, start a rally. And even though, like I said that night, the thought actually crossed my mind. 3-2, they're going to throw him a strike. Rojas has pop, like in batting practice, so he might turn on one. But I immediately told myself, Jeff, you freaking idiot, shut up. Of course Rojas isn't going to homer. So I had the thought and already dismissed it as a possibility. And then it happened. And it was genuinely, I'm sitting on my couch, I'm clutching my pillow, and I've got my wife sitting next to me, and I've got my son on the sectional to my right, and my other son across the room on the couch to my left. And my 18-year-old son, Rojas hits that home run, and Logan stands up, and he's like, and he looks at me, and I'm looking at him, and I just did not believe that it had happened. And I think that's, of the 3 postseasons that Noah asked about, 2020, 2024, 2025, which one was my favorite to watch? 2025 is the only one that had a single moment that I could not believe happened. And it had a couple other ones that were pretty close. The Kike double play to end game 6. The even early in game 3, the crazy play where what's his name? Dalton Varsho thought he had walked, and Bo Bichette thought that Varsho had walked. And so Bichette gets picked off first. Like the things you never see. And in that game, 85 different players getting thrown out on the bases that game. You know, another 18-inning game like this, but then all capped off by the Rojas home run. That's literally unbelievable. And so I think 2025 takes the cake in that way. 2020 was wonderful because it was the first Dodgers World Series title since I was 11. It was that crazy year that the year had sucked in so many different ways. So that was great. Last year was great just for all the people who've been saying Mickey Mouse ring, like, you know, Freddie's Grand Slam last year, all that was amazing, beating the Yankees. So they all absolutely have their charms. But because of the literally unbelievable moment, I'm going with 2025. But also that could be recency bias, I guess. Let's see. I know I got another super chat or two. Ken Wolcott says, $5 super chat. Thanks for reading so many of my comments. This is your best show ever. I don't know about that, but I appreciate it. You know, like this is, yeah, I'm going to be talking baseball. I might as well be doing it here with you guys. You know, I've actually thought about just like doing random streams during the day where there's no topic and just, hey, hop in the chat and let's just chit chat, you know, like baseball trivia. Throw baseball trivia at me, guys. Like, I love baseball trivia. I'm good at it. My favorite game is what I call the baseball card game. It's a pretty clever name. Basically, you take any baseball card from between 1984 and 1991 and hold it up with the name covered, and I can tell you who it is. It's my favorite game. So, you know, figure out a way to do that here on YouTube. $4.99 super chat from Raul Robles. Diet Coke appreciation for the late show, Jeff. Appreciate you, Raul. And so does Diet Coke. You are my homie. Jump back into the regular chat. Noah says, Jeff, what is your all MLB first team of only Dodger players? So I assume this means of all time, like my position by position favorite player of all time. Let's see how I can do it, you know? And I guess this is again one of those things where it's like, we talking about best or we talking about my favorites? Because Mike Marshall was my favorite player. Not the good Mike Marshall, the bad Mike Marshall was my favorite player growing up. I carry a 1987 Topps Mike Marshall card around in my wallet all the time. It's fun, you know, but he wasn't nearly the best at any of the positions he played. But I love Mike Marshall. I put him in right field. Brett Butler in center field. Left field, we'll go with, I take it back. Mookie Betts is my right fielder. Sorry, Mike Marshall. Mike Marshall could maybe be my first baseman. I'll think about that. Left field, I don't know. It's been a long life I've lived, and you know, I like a lot of guys. I don't know. I'd have to give it more thought, honestly. Maybe I shouldn't even read that question, no, because I don't have a good answer for you right now. But maybe I'll think about it, you know, over time. Don Kim says, if Salt Lake City gets a baseball team, over under on rain delays, 3. Yeah, it's part of my issue with living here in Utah. Like, I'm part rooting for Salt Lake to get a team, but then there's a part of me that already doesn't think Colorado should have a team. And Salt Lake isn't as high elevation as Colorado, but it's not a ton lower. It would definitely be, you know, and then when you factor in the weather, it's not crazy at all for us to get snow in April. The drawings I've seen of the potential ballpark doesn't have a retractable roof. So it might just be, they might become what I hate, but you know what? That's all right. Snafu says, Jeff mutes the mic when he sneezes and coughs. What a pro. I do my best. Yeah. I'm a cougher, you know? Let's see. IB Stroking says, Jeff is coasting. Thumbs up emoji. Hey, thumbs up right back at you. Yeah, G agrees. Evan Phillips is the only pitcher he can think of that will open on the 60-day IL. Me too, but also, who knows what happens between now and then. And Tommy Edman, I guess, is another guy who could open on the 60-day IL. They say they expect him to, where they hope he's going to be ready for opening day. I would guess he's not going to be so not ready that they would start him. You say he's not going to be ready until, late May, which is what they need to be for the 60-day IL. But possibility, depending on how that recovery goes from that surgery. Let's see. Oh, Cole asked, Jeff, did you buy or make that bat flag behind you? None of the above. My wife, my father-in-law is a woodworker, and my wife saw the idea on Pinterest or something and sent the picture to her dad. This is 10 or 12 years ago, and says, hey, Dad, do you think you can make something like that for Jeff for Christmas? And he said, absolutely. So I got that for Christmas from my wife, made by my father-in-law. It's pretty awesome. Rocky says, Jeff, is there a desire from the Salt Lake City population to get a baseball team? Feel like Nashville is a lock. I agree on Nashville. And yeah, I honestly think Nashville and Salt Lake, if they do expand by 2 teams, I think it's Nashville and Salt Lake. I think it comes down to Salt Lake or Portland. And I think there's a lot of reasons why Salt Lake has the advantage over Portland there. And I do think the population would really love it. I don't know how well attended it will be. But I mean, they love their minor league team, which obviously is a much smaller stadium. We've got the Jazz are huge here in the NBA, have the Utah Mammoth now in the NHL. Both of those are huge. Ryan Smith, who owns those 2 teams, would, I assume, be involved on some level of some sort of ownership of a baseball team. The dude knows the state of Utah and loves the state of Utah. I think it would be fun. I think it'd be really cool. Insert silly handle says, Jeff has Verdugo on the shelf. LOL. I have everybody on the shelf. I've got Manny Machado on the shelf. In addition to this one, whose head I ripped off to make fun of his chicken legs, I've got a Manny Machado on the shelf over there. I've got, insert, I've even got, guys who shall not be named still there. Like, it's the OCD part of me. And over here on this side, like back there, I don't know how to point. I've got Cole Calhoun in an Angel uniform robbing a home run that I got in an Angel game one time. This right here is an Italian sausage bobblehead from a Brewers game I went to in 2012. So yeah, I've got all my bobbleheads up there. They all go on the shelf, but I rearrange them, make some of them in less prominent places, depending on how things are. Man, you guys are chatting faster than I can keep up. I appreciate that. Cole says 2024 was his favorite because we made the Padres cry. And honestly, one of the things I really liked about 2025 was that the Dodgers didn't play anybody from the NL West for the first time since 2019. And I found that quite refreshing and enjoyable. The fact that it was just baseball and not, is it a rivalry? Is it not a rivalry? I don't know. So I enjoyed not playing anybody in the NL West this year. Don Kim says manager John Snider said they could have swept the Dodgers, referring to the Jays being tied 1-1 in the 7th and in Game 2 and leading in Game 3. And that's true everywhere around. I said this about the Phillies series, that even though the Dodgers won 3-1, like, it very easily could have gone 3-1 the other direction. The Dodgers were, if Teo doesn't hit that home run, they lose Game 1. If, Blake Trinan is a little bit worse than terrible in Game 2, they lose that game. All the games were relatively close. And so the series doesn't look that close, but it was close. And even the Brewers series, you had a 2-1 win and a 3-1 win. And that 3-1 win, Game 3, that was the game I was at. It never felt comfortable. That was when Jacob Mizorowski was pitching, and it's 1-1 for most of the game. And then Tommy Edman gets that RBI hit to make 2-1. Abner Uribe makes the throwing error to make it 3-1. And that ends up being the final score. But you never felt super, relaxed in that game. So yeah, even though the Dodgers swept the Brewers, that series could have gone different. And so absolutely, a series that goes 7 games like this Blue Jays one, and how much back and forth there was, it could have been a sweep in either direction. And I guess once the Dodgers lost the first game 11-2, you can't really say they were in that one. But Dodgers easily could have won it in 5, but they also easily could have got swept. And I don't have any issue with John Snider saying that. I assume Blue Jays fans are yelling at him like people are like, oh, it's only one game, people like to misinterpret what people are saying. But yeah, it very easily could have been a sweep, but it wasn't, and I'm glad about that. Let's see. RJM says, before the Miguel home run, I was getting to take my licks online as I wasn't expecting that to happen. Well, get ready to take your licks online. Yeah, and I don't talk trash to other fan bases, but I was not looking forward to doing a post-World Series loss podcast episode that night. That wasn't going to be fun. So, yeah, just such an amazing home run. Just so ridiculous. Yeah, if you guys aren't subscribed to this channel, go ahead and subscribe right now, okay? And also, if you're not on the what's it called? The Discord. Go to patreon.com/RealFRG. $5 a month gets you on the Discord. It's fun over there. We're talking Dodgers like this, not for 2 hours like we are right now, but all day long, all the time. BC says, Jeff, how many games was the first ever World Series and what year was? Oh, is this baseball trivia? I know it was 1901, and I know it was the Pirates and the Red Sox. I actually don't know how many games it went, but I got the year and the competitors. Actually, they probably weren't called the Red Sox, so they were probably called the Boston Americans at the time. But I think the Pirates were the Pirates. Cole says, Jeff, do a show called Let's Change Baseball. We were talking about rule changes we would make if we could. Hey, on my old podcast, it was a running joke, #Jeff for commissioner. I've got changes I would make, and I would be a good commissioner. So if anybody's hiring for that job, I know I'd be better than that idiot who has the job right now. Don't Care 187 says, I appreciate the late night streams, Jeff. I listen while working all night, off work at 5 a.m. Appreciate you. I will not be staying here that long, but I'm happy to do a couple hours here. Like I said, it's funny. I've been exhausted all day. I didn't sleep well last night. Little more behind the curtain. I mentioned I was driving all day today and last night, so I had to be up a little earlier than usual. I'm usually a night owl and then I sleep in, but I had to be up at like 8:15 this morning. Not early, obviously. I know that's like a normal time to get up, but for me, it's a little bit earlier than usual. And last night I could not get to sleep. My wife has an ear infection, and she sleeps with earplugs in because this is kind of loud. And so we thought, well, maybe she shouldn't sleep with her earplugs in last night. See how it goes. So I slept in the guest room last night, and the guest room bed is not nearly as comfortable as my bed. And so I didn't sleep well. So I only got like 4 hours of sleep last night. So I've been exhausted all day, but I'm actually I got my second wind here tonight. So I'm enjoying this, just chit-chatting, talking Dodgers. I finished all the episodes of Tracker that are on Hulu, so I don't really have a show I'm anxious to get upstairs and watch right now while I get ready to fall asleep. Snafu says, now you got to show us that card or you're lying to us, Jeff. I assume you mean the Mike Marshall in my wallet card. My wallet is upstairs. I think it's it might even be in my car. It's usually in my car, but it's probably on the island. I think I brought it in, but it's not down here near me. So I don't have it, but I'll try to remember to bring my wallet down in a future episode and show you my Mike Marshall wallet card because it is always there. And Snafu says the Salt Lake City Padres. Oh, look, there's a ban button here. Gee, I wonder if I should use that. Knock it off, Snafu. Salt Lake Padres. Alex says Utah can just get a dome stadium. Yeah, it would make sense. But like I said, I think the drawings I've seen of the stadium, I don't remember a roof. Maybe does have a retractable roof. I don't know, but definitely should. I know that for sure. I'm going to cough again, so I'm going to mute real quick. Now I'm going to take a drink of my water. Okay, G says, here's a good trivia that I read a while ago. Who broke up 81 no-hitters with a homer? Hint, it's a bit of a trick question. It is. It's easy. It's Ricky Henderson. Leadoff home runs. By definition, break up a no-hitter. Yeah, that's a fun one. Diane says, who has the most bobbleheads, you or Richie? I think I remember Richie saying he has over 300. I don't know how many I have, but it's not that many. I'm guessing I'm around 200, give or take 20. But yeah, I'm almost positive Richie has more than I do. Richie's a lot older than me, so he had longer to collect them, like a lot older than me. Swollen Sausage says Rojas wears Manny Mota's number 11. That has magic in it. Rojas wears number 72. He gave his number to Roki Sasaki. Ken Wolcott, trivia question. Only player to play for all 4 expansion teams, and only those teams. He means all 4 original expansion teams. The Mets, the Astros, the Angels, and the Rangers. That, of course, is the man my second son is named after, Lynn Nolan Ryan. Yep. That's a good one. I like that. Ray Velasquez says, Jeff's the man. I don't care what anybody says. Hey, appreciate it. I don't care what anybody says either, Ray. Between you and me, let's get the word out that I am the man. My brother used to try to insult me when we were kids by saying, you wonder why nobody likes you, which I think is just a great insult. It's like, not only are you unpopular, you're too stupid to know why. It just doesn't, it didn't work on me because I knew that I was more popular than him. G5 Ring says, so what was your shower like today? Shower was tired, mostly. Yeah, today's shower is very much a wake me up and get me moving kind of shower. I set the water a little bit colder than usual to kind of wake me up a little bit. Yeah, but I mean, same length as usual because I washed the same body parts, i.e. all of them. But yeah. Jenny says, wow, your wife's dad is legit. He absolutely is. Great woodworking there. Richie says, hey, Jeff, I never want to hear complaints about the length of my voicemails again. Hey, Richie, here's the difference, bro. It's my show. But yeah, keep your voicemail shorter and I won't complain about the length anymore. Looking to see if there's any other trivia questions coming in or anything. I can't even tell, like, I assume somewhere it tells me when these comments came in, so I can't even tell how far behind it I am. Oh, I do see that Ken later posted the corrected version of his trivia question saying the 4 original franchise expansion teams. Cole says 2024 didn't feel as stressful as 2025. I think the World Series, that's true. I feel like the 2024 NLDS was the lowest I've seen Dodger fans in a long time. Being down 2-1, facing the possibility of getting knocked out for the 3rd straight year by an NL West opponent, I feel like that was the lowest I had seen Dodger fans. And so that was more stressful than anything that we had this year, for me anyway. Arnie says the Dodgers had clutch hits and homers when they were needed. Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like when you watch that recap, the Dodgers won 5-4. All 4 Blue Jays runs get shown on the recap. Only 3 of the Dodgers would do. They don't even show the 2 sac flies that scored the first 2 Dodgers runs. And that first one was a huge moment. Like if the Blue Jays had won that game, that sac fly probably would be shown because Dalton Varsho diving and making the catch saved a couple runs, and so, but it's kind of funny that even though the Dodgers won that game, not all their runs get shown because 2 of them were sac flies, but then 3 solo homers were the big hits. A lot of fun. Alex says, Jeff, I would like to have played the Padres in the postseason this year, beat them and put the whole rivalry to rest. And Padre fans, Dodgers beat them in 2020. They beat them in 2021, and they beat them in 2024. It's been put to rest. It's never going to be put to rest as far as some fans are concerned. And so chasing that particular dragon is probably a losing fight. Let's see. Just looking at something. That's right. Yeah, Ken corrected me. The first World Series 1903, then it wasn't played in 1904, and then it continued in 1905. I always get, because the American League started in 1901, and I always forget that, the World Series didn't start then. So I guess I was wrong about that one. And BC says it was best of 9, and it went 8 games. Looking at that, the Pirates lost to the Boston Americans 5-3. So I had the participants right, and I knew that the Red Sox had won it. Richie says Jeff needs a DeVore Man Cave appearance. Hey, it'll probably happen at some point. It's just, when I'm in California, I'm there for a reason usually, and but one of these days we'll make it happen. Rocky Rivera, Jeff, if you could interview any player, dead or alive, who would it be? What questions would you ask? Sandy Kofax is my dream podcast guest among living people right now. And if we're just talking players, it's hard for me to top Sandy Koufax. Nolan Ryan and Cal Ripken were my 2 favorite players growing up. It's why I named sons after them. But then I also named a son after Sandy Koufax. And growing up, I was a Dodger fan, but I was also just a baseball fan in general. And so I watched a ton of baseball. And as I've gotten older, I watch more Dodgers and less other baseball. And so I'm just more Dodgers focused now. And so Sandy Koufax has kind of crept up there. And obviously Clayton Kershaw is my favorite player of all time. But Kershaw has been interviewed so many times that Koufax is a guy who I feel like it would just be just crazy intriguing to talk with him for a long time about baseball. So that would probably be my answer. Swollen Sausage says he was a Mike Marshall fan too. I only picked Mike Marshall because my brother's favorite player was Steve Sax, because Sax was little and fast and played second base like my brother. And I was like, oh, do we have to pick our favorite players based on physical characteristics? I guess I'll take the big goofy looking guy. So I went with Mike Marshall. Not as goofy looking as I thought he was. He dated, what's her name? From the what's they're called? Bob Welch and Mike Marshall both dated ladies from the same band. Was it Belinda Carlisle that he dated? Whatever band that she was in. So he was probably good looking. Richie says, hey, Jeff, I saw Babe Ruth play. Absolutely. I believe it. As a rookie, I think. Let's see. Swollen Sausage says number 72 is Carlton Fisk's number. That's where the magic came from then. Although when Carlton Fisk had his magic home run, he was wearing number 27 then, because he was 27 on the Red Sox and then switched to 72 when he went to the White Sox. So, okay, Raul Robles, trivia. Who did the Dodgers try to win their 6th rookie in a row but got corked bat suspended? So 6th in a row, we're talking about 1996, which is a hard one for me because 1996 is the year I left on my church mission, and I started the year in college and then left on my mission. So I only watched a handful of games that year, trying to think who would have gotten corked bat suspension for the Dodgers in 1996. I'd guess like Wilton Guerrero. That would be my guess. So Raul, let me know if I got it right, and I'll eventually scroll down to that part in the chat. Diane makes a good point. It costs literally nothing to subscribe to this YouTube channel. So if you haven't yet, please do right now. You know what? The more subscribers we get, I see, like, I saw that Dodger Blue got to 100,000 subscribers, which is great for them. They do great work over there. Let's get some of that here, you know. We don't need to get to 100,000 today, but let's get there. Let's see. BC mentions, did anyone else see something fall out of Dave's mouth after Rojas' home run? Didn't look like gum too big. Yeah, it looked like a wad of chew to me, and it was very much like the look on Doc's face when he's like his disbelief was all of our disbelief. It was wild. Let's see. Snafu says, I'd interview Vin Scully just to hear his magical voice again. Yeah, this question was specifically about players. If somebody said you can have dinner with any 4 historical figures, I would say, can I just have dinner with Vin Scully 4 times instead? Because, yeah, Vin Scully is my hero, my favorite person ever in the whole world. So, and yeah, one of my favorite quirks of baseball is that Vin Scully and Bo Jackson have the same first and middle names. Vincent Edward Jackson and Vincent Edward Scully. Just like Hank Aaron and Lou Gehrig are both Henry Lewis. Snafu asks, what language did I master for my mission? Well, I went to Montana, so I mastered the Montana version of English, which is definitely different than my Southern California version of English at the time. I remember I came home and I said something about wrestling, and my sister almost cried, like, why do you talk like that? But yeah, for the most part, it was just English. Just Raul Robles confirms I did get the trivia question right. It was Wilton Guerrero. I don't know why I remember Wilton Guerrero getting busted for a cork bat, but it stuck in my mind somewhere. And the 1996 year sounded about right. Wilton Guerrero, of course, famously the uncle of World Series loser Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Noah says, not enough people talk about the game-saving catch that Freddie made to end NLDS Game 3. That was Game 2, right? I think it was Game 2. Dodgers lost Game 3. So that was Game 2 that whole ninth inning was crazy, with Trinan coming in and being terrible, and Vesia coming in and being, not quite as good as you want him to be. So then Roki comes in and gets the routine ground out, and Tommy Edman almost throws it away. Just crazy. I was watching on my phone because my son had a game. So I'm sitting in the bleachers. My son's game is getting ready to start, and I'm watching it happen. And the funny thing is, the Phillies AAA catcher was there at the ballpark with me. And so after the game ended, I hollered over to him. I say, hey, Peyton, did you see how it ended? And so he ran over so I could tell him. And, he doesn't have a lot of, this was his first year in the Phillies organization, and they didn't call him up to big leagues. So his main loyalty actually was to Jesus Luzardo, because they were teammates on the Marlins. That game 2 was crazy, that ninth inning. Brian, Belinda Carlisle from the Go-Go's. Mike Marshall dated Belinda Carlisle, and Bob Welch dated the one whose name I can't remember. 2 Dodgers dating 2 Go-Go's. Noah corrected himself later and correctly said Game 2. So I appreciate that. Always appreciate accuracy. BC says the players know Freddie's tall, so they just throw it wherever around him and expect him to get like a tall wide receiver in football. I think there's some of that. And I've mentioned this. I know I mentioned it on Twitter. I don't know if I've mentioned it here on the show, but Mookie Betts sure did pick a good time to make his best throw of the season on that double play to end Game 7. Like, it was, Mookie struggled with some throws that were easier than that one. That one, everything about that throw, running, throwing across his body, Barger sliding in with his arms up, everything about it. Like, it easily could have been a trickier throw, and he just hit Freddie right in the chest. It was beautiful. Arnie says Dodgers won Game 3, Yama complete game. No, we're talking about the NLDS. Now that was the NLCS that Yama threw the complete game, and that wasn't wasn't game 3 either, because game 3 was the game that I was at that Glasnow pitched in the NLCS. But yeah, the Dodgers won the first 2 games in Philadelphia, and then they lost game 3 in LA, and then won game 4 to finish the series. Yeah, that's right. Alex points out they lost game 3, and Yamamoto wasn't great in that game. That's what it was. And Ghost Bear says, do my eyes deceive me? A 2-hour stream? Yeah, you know what? Why not? We'll just keep going. All right. If anybody else has any other trivia or anything they want to throw at me, speak now or forever hold your peace. And by forever, I mean until our next stream. You know, anytime you want to throw baseball trivia in this chat, I'll just hijack an episode and answer your trivia question. And sometimes I'll get it right, and sometimes I'll be off by 2 years about the first World Series. Yeah, that 1901, 1903 thing. Like, I can never remember if 1903 was the first or the second World Series, and if it was 1902 or 1904 that they didn't play one. So, Brian says, do you think Bo Bichette returns to the Blue Jays, or do you think the Dodgers pursue him? I would guess the most likely answer is none of the above, and that he goes somewhere else. But I think the Dodgers will be interested in him. I think there's definitely some intriguing things about that. And with that said, here we are at the 2 hour and 11 minute mark, 131 minutes. Nothing fancy about those numbers. So I think we're about done. Beverly points out game 3 of the NLDS. She says NLCS, but NLDS was the Schwarber game. Yeah, it's kind of funny that Willie Stargell was the only left-hander to hit the ball out of Dodger Stadium forever, and then 2 guys did it in the span of a week and a half or whatever. Schwarber and Ohtani, kind of wild. But yeah, Willie Stargell needed some company. And I've now talked about Willie Stargell in 2 different contexts in this episode, so I guess that's going to do it for now. I am interested to see this. Snavu says, I love this. You're way more interactive with the chat versus your last gig. Yeah, honestly, there are things I miss about my last gig for sure. Specifically, the financial backing of the network was stronger in place with Locked On. And I miss that. So far, this has not been what I need it to be financially. I'll put it that way. But I love the fact that I'm not locked into only being able to do 30-minute shows. So we can just kind of go for 2 hours if we want to once in a while. It's fun. Ken Wolcott, trivia question. 4 American League batting champs who had no homers in the season they won the batting title. I would guess Rod Carew is one of them. I'm trying to think if there's any other modernish ones, or if we'd go back to, I would guess the other ones would all be back, like Ty Cobb probably did it one year, although he had his fair share of homers, but Tony Oliva was the same kind of hitter as Tony Gwynn, so it wouldn't surprise me, or not Tony Gwynn, Rod Carew, so it wouldn't surprise me if he did it. Excuse me. I'll have to keep thinking about that one, Ken. Actually, I don't know that I'll come up with that one, Ken. I assume Rod Carew is correct. Tony Oliva wouldn't surprise me. The other ones, I don't know. Cole says, Jeff, name the last 5 Dodgers no-hitters. So we had the combined no-hitter in Mexico with Buehler starting. We had, did the Dodgers throw a no-hitter recently? No, Yamamoto almost did. So I think the combined no-hitter with Buehler was the most recent one, unless I'm missing something obvious. Then we had probably nothing before that since Kershaw in 2014 and Josh Beckett in 2014. And before that, Kevin Gross. Do we go all the way back to Kevin Gross? And then do we go all the way back to Fernando Valenzuela? I feel like I'm missing some in there. But let me know. Ken says my mistake. The others were NL. Okay, so winning the batting title with no home runs. Let's see. I'll still have to think about that one. Ken says Rod Carew is correct. Yeah, Tony Gwynn wouldn't surprise me if he did. I know he didn't hit a lot of home runs, but I doubt that he ever won a batting title without hitting any home runs. Yeah, that's a good one. I'll have to think about that one, Ken. Oh, that's right. Hideo Nomo threw a no-hitter for the Dodgers against the Rockies in Colorado. I remember that one now. Yeah, I got Beckett. So yeah, I know Buehler combined, Kershaw and Beckett. I'm just trying to remember if there were some between then and all the way back to Nomo and then to Kevin Gross or whatever. All right. I think if Cole wants to throw the answer into his trivia question about the last 5 no-hitters, Ramon Martinez threw one, but I'm trying to remember if I feel like Kevin Gross's was after Ramon's, but maybe not. But I think that'll do it for me. This was fun, guys. Kept a big group here, chat going crazy. Appreciate all of you sticking around. And if you're watching this later, I hope it was at least moderately enjoyable for you. Moderately enjoyable is what I'm going for here. And with that said, thank you to all of you in the chat. Thank you to the mods. Thanks for not being a-holes in the chat. That's a nice change. Sometimes there's some of that. As I mentioned before, if you're not yet in our Discord server, go to patreon.com/realfrg. $5 a month gets you access to the Discord server. $5 membership here on YouTube does it too, but Patreon is the better way to go, probably. Less wonky. So check that out. Thank you to the Bleav Network. Thank you to FanDuel. Thank you for all of you. And I think, I don't know what else to say other than bye.